have to admit I wasn't surprised, but I was extremely disappointed. This is a terrible moment for higher education. Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania are just the beginning. The political attacks that you've just profiled by Elise Stefanik and most other members of the House committee that held those hearings on December 5th have actually declared war on the independence, on academic freedom, on the truth of American history and our present at all colleges and universities, just as Governor DeSantis has done in Florida and Greg Abbott has done in Texas and other governors and legislative bodies in many other states. This is the next step in now a 3-year-long campaign to destroy this country's capacity to address its past and its present, to deal with the structural racism, the systemic inequalities that cause premature death amongst millions of Americans every year. And right now, the Republicans and their allies are winning.
So if you can put Claudine Gay's Gay in context, the first Black president, the first Black woman president, the second woman to lead Harvard University. Now her presidency is the shortest in Harvard's history. And put in the context of the whole attack on DEI, the whole attack on critical race theory. And if you can talk about this campaign by Stefanik, by Rufo, as they go from the congressional hearing, which didn't succeed in taking her down, to this issue of plagiarism.
Okay, well, let me start with the fact that Harvard's the oldest, wealthiest, most prestigious university in this country and globally. So for almost 400 years, Harvard has systematically excluded white women and people of color, by and large, from its hallowed corridors, from entering its gates. That's just an absolute fact. A fact that the university under the previous president, Larry Bacow, admitted to in a report called the Harvard Legacy of Slavery Report that was issued just over a year ago, a report that points out precisely how not only did the university exclude people of color from getting an education, but in fact collected the bodies of indigenous people and enslaved people for scientific research, and led into the 20th century calls for scientific racism that helped to construct the racial hierarchies that we still live with in this country today. That's Harvard's own history as a leader. So the very university that finally arrived at a moment where it not only reckoned with its own history, but also recognized that talent is universal and that the best of us actually have the ability to move this country and world forward in a time when the planet is literally on fire, and most people who will suffer most from that will be people of color. That is the context that brought Claudine Gay to the presidency, and she was ably and excellently qualified for that role. She had proven herself in previous administrative roles as dean of the largest school on Harvard's campus. So when we put that in context, the affirmative action decision last June was the first victory for the conservative right in this country to dismantle the very possibility that people like Claudine Gay would have the qualifications, the Harvard and Stanford degrees necessary to take on such positions. And so within that political context, the attack on affirmative action is one example of what's been going on, which is 30 years old, a battle. But additionally, and more proximate to this moment, people like Christopher Rufo in late 2020, in response to George Floyd's killing, have initiated an effort, what we would call a white lash or a backlash, forms of misinformation to essentially define a body of knowledge known as critical race theory that is the intellectual basis for understanding how systemic and structural racism work as anti-American, as Marxist, as a threat to American civilization. And that led to 24 states criminalizing the teaching of history in all its truth about race, about racism, about sex, about gender. That led to the banning of DEI in places like Florida and to some degree in Texas. And what we saw happen here with this campaign against Claudine Gay where plagiarism became the pretext, kind of like a black motorist with tinted windows being stopped only to look for drugs so that they could be incarcerated as part of a war on black people during mass incarceration. That is the context where Christopher Rufo, who initiated the critical race theory anti-woke campaign, has now culminated in yet another victory with taking down Claudine Gay over a very, very minor offense within academic context.